Okay, hello. For those of you who are visiting here, likely you're one of my friends who I have told about my tower and the fact that I don't want it to get erased eventually and never have a record of it ever being made, so here we are. If there's anyone who's randomly visiting this video, hello. And I'm going to apologize in advance for the low quality of the graphics settings. This is not a video intended to showcase all of the wondrous graphics capabilities of 7 Days to Die, but rather this is a discussion of architecture and base building. So, with that said, a couple of quick details. This is on a PvE server. It's on the All Night Gamers Jericho server. More on that at the end of the video if you're actually interested in that, but for those of you just here to see the tower, we'll get into that later, so I'm not wasting your time. This looks like probably just a simple small tower, but on closer inspection you can see that it's actually a standard pit drop tower, and it's quite deep. You can see that we're standing at plus 68 meters right now at ground level, and bedrock is right around negative 56, so that gives you an idea of how far down that is. So the purpose of this obviously is to be able to not only sustain hordes and just have generally a place to base, but also to be able to produce things at will, because when you're that far down, you can turn on all your forges and everything and you don't get any screamers. However, if you should want to get screamers, which sometimes you do, you obviously have the option of lighting some campfires. I'm going to add more of these later, but lighting some campfires or any other heat source up close to ground level, and then you'll get plenty of them. A couple of ways to fight. So you can see this room right here has electrical wire that's running from the ceiling through the floor, and of course these campfires right here, and ultimately there'll be at least another 8 of them. Idea being that as long as you leave this drawbridge down, zombies will tend to try to run around and come into this area, run through the campfire, set themselves on fire, and be standing wherever they're standing in the midst of electricity while they're trying to either beat their way through these rails or more likely through this door to get to you. While you, of course, are on the other side of this entire contraption in a protected area where you can fight them at will, whether you fight them with melee or shotguns or explosive bolts or whatever you do. Now, how all of this works, before I go down into the base of the tower, I'll just give you an idea of what the top of the tower looks like. We'll go on up here to this level right here. This is what I like to call the rat's nest. This is where I have all of the electrical wiring set up to run all of this. So these electrical fence posts right here are the top or the outgoing electricity. It's powered by this generator right here when I turn it on, and then it goes up into these relays and down into each of these fence posts here, and then there is a matching room on the floor below that gate entrance room where all of the receiving posts are. And then in addition, I have some other relays in here that are running power from different locations through the tower. I generally try to hide the wiring as much as I possibly can, but since in A16 electricity just got introduced, it's not really all of that. It's not very easy to hide your warriors just yet. So I did make the floor in this room steel, primarily because it's the ceiling of this room where you're going to have a ton of zombies running through, so I wanted to make it as durable as possible. And then continuing up, there's a room in the middle which doesn't really have anything in it yet. And then this room right here is just a room. You'll see 2 battery banks, and these are for some solar panels, which you'll see in just a moment up on the roof. And then, as you know, oh, that was fun, shoot the wall. As you know, the battery banks are a little bit wonky. Sometimes they'll run out of power even if they're being supplied by the sufficiently by the solar arrays. So I do have an emergency generator here that I can, at will, override these relay connections and connect to these 2 things and recharge my batteries from that if I needed to, which usually I don't need to. But and as you can see, usually I keep them all turned off just so they're not running things down. But if you notice today at the top, it's day 1323. It is actually a horde night on this server. I don't intend to run through the horde night because I'm sure you can see hundreds of videos like that on 7 Days to Die, but when I'm setting up for horde night, I'll turn everything on and have it running. I'll give you an idea what that might look like a little bit later. This is the top interior level of the tower, which you can see is a rooftop garden. I use these quarter blocks as my roof, so should anything like a buzzard or whatever manage to somehow get on top of my tower, they can't get through, but this does permit light to come through, and as you can see, everything does grow quite nicely. You can see a couple of wires coming down from those rooftop solar arrays. We'll just kind of step out here because this is kind of a neat view. So this is just a walkway around the top level of the tower, and you can see, again, of course, I've got my graphics settings quite low, but you can see a very far distance in all directions here. One of the reasons I picked this area is because it started out as this nice large flat plateau. There's a trader right there, as you can see it, and then way off in the distance there you can see another trader right there. I do have tunnels that run all the way to that trader and beyond, but more on that later. And so there is a ladder to get access up to the roof, to get the best view possible, and also to be able to access the solar banks so that you can turn them on or off or put in new panels or whatever you need to do. It is worth saying that everything in this tower was made vanilla. There's no admin commands, no spawning any of anything, all made as a player, with the minor exception that I did have 4 blocks out of tens and tens and tens of thousands. 4 of the blocks would not dry, and an admin did provide me with the dried versions of those blocks. But other than that, every single block is placed in absolute vanilla 7 days to die. So if there's anything you see here that you want to do, you can do it yourself without any mods. So going back down, we're going to go now down to the lower levels of the tower, which I think is probably the more interesting levels. I do have a couple of gateways here. This one, more on this later. This is an elevator. We'll talk about that. Experienced players will know exactly what that is, and for those of you that don't, we'll discuss it. This is the ladder, the manual ladder for going up and down the tower. You can see that there are rooms. All of these little stops are rooms along the way. For instance, this one is a mushroom farm in here. This one right here is, as I mentioned, that receiving room for the fence posts that you can see there that come through the ceiling. There are bedrooms for the players that I trust that are living in the tower with me. Some other more interesting rooms that I'll show you later. But one of the things I like about this is, as again, experienced players will know, if you fall and you fall on a hay bale, you don't take any damage. So rather than running up and down this ladder all the time, I just do a jump and I fall all the way down, which gets you down to the bottom quite quickly, and you find yourself down at the lower level of the tower. Let's see if I can, sometimes it's a little glitchy after you've done that. So before we move on, I will show you one of the rooms. This is my gas production room. So all this is just a massive number of chem stations and workbenches so that I can take shale, and actually that's locked, so I'll have to figure that out later. But I can take the shale. It is worth noting I'm playing on an alternate account, so sometimes the codes are not entered. Let's go ahead and put this one in. Actually, let's not do that. We'll do that later. So you can produce probably 500 barrels of gas very quickly, maybe 20 minutes of real time. 500 barrels of gas will sell for 200,000 dukes. I anticipate that'll be changed at some point if they ever get around to balancing the economy, but for now, it is a way to get your money very quickly and be able to buy whatever you want from the trader. And then, of course, you end up with as many dukes as you want. This room right here is the room right above the fighting floor, which you'll see in just a moment. This is the storage room. So all of these textures that you see in here are paints, which is another thing that was introduced in A16. So what I'm actually standing on is a concrete floor. This is actually a steel beam that runs from bedrock all the way up through the center of the tower to that floor, the ground level floor on top. These are, of course, painted to look like the crates or with the textures on them, but they are wooden storage crates. So this is just a way of somebody like me who's a little bit OCD being able to organize all of the different things that I can get. And what you see here, these 4 boxes right here in the ground, you'll see them on the ceiling of the room below us. This is so that when I'm on the fighting floor, I can